Mike.
All right, how you doing, Brenda?
Good, good, good. Now, do you know anything about the program he's talking about?
Not offhand. I may have seen something about it, but it doesn't ring a bell offhand.
Okay, you can ring a bell to me either. So we're gonna get into it because I only have you for an hour. Your show is on. You go ahead and
Yep,
tell them
11 p.m.
when you're on, Michael.
Yeah, I'm on Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time, right here on 910 AM Superstation, Future Radio, and then also Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So we deal with current events, history, politics, education, economic empowerment. I'm also a panelist on Roland Martin Unfiltered, usually on Fridays. So I share some of those segments on my show also. And
And you're
and
more than
also
that.
also follow me.
Sometimes
Also, just
um,
one quick thing.
your show comes on.
Follow me on
Go ahead.
Facebook, the African History Network, the African History Network on Facebook, and on YouTube, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, and visit my website, africanhistorynetwork.com, africanhistorynetwork.com. All right, sorry about that. Go ahead.
That's what I'm saying. You're always on somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, if people have a lull in their day, all they have to do is go over to the African History Network, and you have some pearls of wisdom, some education for other folks, and then you will learn anything, something new in the
Mhm.
first 5 minutes that you listen to him. Any part of his show, he also backs up all of his information. He'll tell you where you can go get it for free. And we must be reading, really. If we're going to get out of this mess,
Right.
Michael, people have to start reading again and definitely demand that of their children and grandchildren.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow the people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you've been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So that's one of the reasons why I created the African History Network back in 2010. Right now, it's correctional behavior. So is Dr. Carter G. Woodson, he taught us the importance of our history, and he was an educator. And one of the things he did was created the Associated Publishers Inc., which was a book publishing company. He created that in 1921, so we could publish textbooks for our schools and publish books by our African American historians and publish his books, things of this nature.
And let's talk about Carter G. Woodson.
Mm-hmm.
What is the information that you hear about Carter G. Woodson that is absolutely wrong?
Well, it's not so much information I hear is wrong. It's the absence of information about Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Oftentimes, when I speak at African American History Month or Black History Month celebrations, his name doesn't even come up. Oftentimes, and Dr. Carter G. Woodson co-founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, September 9th, 1915. The other four co-founders were Dr. George C. Hall, James E. Stamps, William B. Hartgrave, and Alexander L. Jackson. But and then it became known as ASALA years later. But ASALA is a organization that Dr. Carter G. Woodson saw the need for to research, preserve, and document the history, achievements, and accomplishments of African Americans in this country, but also throughout the diaspora and on the continent of Africa as well. Okay, because he felt if these history and achievements were not documented, they would be lost. And he was an educator, and he understood that our people did not know their history, and he understood that the teaching of our history starts in our homes also. Okay, we'll continue this on the other side of the break. All right, stand by. Stand by, everybody. We're on commercial break. I'm on Brenda Hill's show. on 910 AM, the Superstation WFDF. Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, email me at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. Visit my website, africanhistorynetwork.com. We have information there. Okay, you can support us through PayPal and Cash App, but you can, we have information there if you want me to speak for African American History Month. Email us at ahnshow@africanhistorynetwork.com. And then be sure to register for the classes that I teach on Saturdays and Sundays. We have new classes starting up Saturday, February 5th, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understand the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Class number 1 starts. And then on Sunday, February 6th, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement of Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Okay, so these classes are regularly $130 each. They're on sale, $80. And then we have a bundle pack where you can register for both classes, and you're going to get some bonus lectures from me. You'll get 15 bonus lectures in digital format. Bundle pack for only $120, okay, for both classes. So visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We're on commercial break. I'm on Brenda Hill's show, 910 AM, the Superstation WFDF. Stand by. We'll be back from break in 2 minutes. My show will be on tonight, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the African History Network show. Stand by. I'm going to post the info.
There was the pumping station. The federal government gave us $300 million. What happened to that money? I take the hard-hitting question. I give the hard-hitting answer.
We are 910 AM Superstation. 910, the Superstation, the oldest radio station in town since 1922.
I can catch the Michael, you were talking about Carter G. Woodson, and also I want you to talk about some of the early slave uprising. I put the uprising, the revolution, the revolt of 1712 in New York on my page just to show that we've been fighting since we met them, right? We've been fighting, trying to fight our way out of this systematic oppression. But I want to talk about Carter G. Woodson, and can you talk about some of our early revolts as well?
Right, sure. So with Dr. Carter G. Woodson, he was a great historian. He was the principal founder of the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, which started out as Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, September 9th, 1915. And he was inspired by there was a 3-week symposium that took place in Chicago in 1915 that commemorated the 50th anniversary of the ending of slavery, the 13th Amendment, 1865, and the ending of the Civil War. And the symposium documented the accomplishments and achievements of African Americans for the previous 50 years, from 1865 to 1915. And it was at that symposium that he got the idea for the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. And being a college professor, having taught at the high school level also, he understood that African Americans did not know their history, and he created a cultural celebration called Negro History Week that began the second week in February 1926. Okay, and it started out as a week. 1976, it was expanded to a month. Now, it was one of the myths about African American History Month or Black History Month is that white people gave it to us. No, white people did not give it to us. We created this ourselves. We didn't ask permission. We created this ourselves. Using the second principle of Kwanzaa, Kuji Chagalia, even before Kwanzaa was created. But we know those principles of the Nguzu Saba have always existed when we deal with African history and African people. So Woodson founded Negro History Week in 1926. He explained the reason behind the celebration in a pamphlet widely distributed months before the first celebration was to take place during the second week in February. Now, he chose the second week in February. It wasn't because it's the coldest month of the year. That didn't have anything to do with it. It didn't have anything to do with the fact that it's the shortest month of the year. The reason why he chose the second week in February is because it contains the birth dates of Abraham Lincoln, whose birthday was February 12th, and the assumed birth date of Frederick Douglass, whose assumed birth date was February 14th. A lot of people know that as Valentine's Day. Frederick Douglass, former slave from Maryland, he did not know his exact birth date. He did not know the exact year he was born. It's either 1817 or 1818. So Douglass assumed the birth date of February 14th. So since there were already African Americans were already having celebrations during the second week of February because of these two birthdays, okay, Lincoln and Douglass. So Dr. Woodson, as brilliant as he was, what he did was he inserted the new cultural celebration within that period of time because there were already celebrations going on. But Woodson said that he said that blacks knew practically nothing about their history, and he ultimately believed that African Americans could benefit immensely from knowledge of their past and the accomplishments of their ancestors. He said that race prejudice was the byproduct of white people's beliefs that black people had not contributed anything of worth to world civilization. And he felt that the history of African Americans needed to be taught in every school in the country, not in schools that had a predominantly African American student body. He felt that the history of our people need to be taught in every school across the country, because the racial prejudice that we suffer from, but also racism, and racism being a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, largely comes out of an ignorance and people not understanding history. Okay, so this was his life's work. Okay, he never married, he never had children, and he said his work was his wife. Okay,
let me just jump in, because right now we're having so many clashes over critical race theory, but also teaching true history of this country. The other side is fighting back. I mean, even in predominantly Black communities, white folks are rising up against real Black history being taught. And I remember, that chapter in my social studies book, they showed a slave family, and they were clean and they were smiling. I knew back then, and it was just one, the shortest chapter in the social studies book, but you knew that stuff was a lie. And now they're fighting back. They want the whitewashed version of this country right now. And G Woodson saw the fallacy of that way of thinking in the early 19th century.
Right, exactly. When we look at and I'm looking at comments here on my social media platform. So one person said, why doesn't Black History Month include world history of Black people such as the 1804 Haitian Revolution and others? I think you're going to the wrong celebrations dealing with African American History Month and Black History Month. First of all, there's been an annual theme going back to 1928. Oftentimes the way that African American History Month is celebrated, it's like, I think people mean well, but they never studied the history of it, never studied Dr. Carter G. Woodson, never studied the Sala. When you go look at some of the annual themes, and I deal with this in my presentations.
Wait.
Say it again.
You're asking too much. There's only 5 people in Black history, and that's Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, Sojourner Truth, and Frederick Douglass. That's it.
Well,
that's Black history.
Well, we're allowing other people to frame the conversation, as Dr. Wade Nobles correctly teaches us. Power is the ability to define and shape reality and have other people accept your definition of reality as if it were their own. So we have to reclaim African history and culture. Bantu Stephen Biko, one of our great South African freedom fighters, who was portrayed by Denzel Washington in the 1987 movie Cry Freedom. Bantu Stephen Biko said the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. The most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So we have to take our minds back. But the reason why many of our people don't fight back is because many of our people don't think they're worth fighting for. You can't consume media and listen to music that calls you an N-word and B's and H's and thoughts all day, things like this, and think you're going to have positive self-esteem. So we have to start at the ground level. African history and culture gives us our values, our interests, and our principles, as two of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor James Small, correctly teach us. It's your history and culture that gives you the foundation, and this influences your economic empowerment and your political empowerment. Okay, so when we deal with many of our people who have been brain damaged and taught to see themselves through the eyes of Europeans and taught to hate themselves as well, we have to understand that we're all going through a 12-step process, recovering from the side effects of white supremacy and racism. And each one of us are on various steps in that recovery process. So this is why the history and culture is so important. Now, to get back to your point before we come up on a break, when we look at the fight over this fake fight over what the right wing has called critical race theory, because it's not really critical race theory. What they've done is, and this started with Trump with an executive order in September 2020 that Trump initiated, which is one of the reasons why on this radio station in 2016, I was warning our people so much about Donald Trump and why Donald Trump had to be stopped. But too many of our people are ignorant of history and law and don't understand how to perceive threats and stop them. Okay, so there was an executive order that Trump issued in September 2020 that dealt with diversity in the federal government, diversity training in the federal government, and stopping diversity training in the federal government. This was the impetus of this attack on critical race theory. Now, there's a piece from the NBC News, and I have a whole file on critical race theory because these are things that we deal with on my show. There's a article from NBC News, how Trump ignited the fight over critical race theory in schools. How Trump ignited the fight over critical race theory in schools. One of the biggest mistakes our people make is not understanding that politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement, and not understanding that there's always a backlash to any perceived gains that African Americans make. And the backlash the attack on critical race theory is the backlash to the Black Lives Matter protests and social justice protests that took place in summer of 2020. Okay, now this article up here, people watching on my social media platforms, this one right here, read this one here from NBC News, how Trump ignited the fight over critical race theory in schools. Republican lawmakers across the country have proposed bills to ban critical race theory in K through 12 schools. But see, the problem is critical race theory is not taught in K through 12. Okay, this is from May 10th, 2021. And what they did is that everything that they don't like about teaching the history of slavery, white supremacy, racism, civil rights, things like this, they put this, the GOP, the right wing, put all this under this banner called critical race theory, so that they could then attack it and launch these culture wars as a backlash to the protests that were taking place in the summer 2020, and is working very well. Stand by. Stand by on commercial break. Back in break for 4 minutes. Read this article here. This gets into this executive order that Trump did in September 2020. Okay. And then he was attacking the 1619 Project, Nicole Hannah Jones, New York Times. He was attacking that. He created the 1776 Project, all this stuff. See, this is what happens when people don't understand history and they think a presidential election is about one person versus another person. And this goes back to a September 2020 memo. Okay. The proposed policies mimic former President Donald Trump's September memo ordering the Office of Management and Budget to stop funding training on critical race theory for federal employees, calling it a propaganda effort. This is what launched this whole attack. And we see it has metastasized, and this is going to be one of the platforms that the GOP is going to use in the 2022 midterm elections, and then most likely the 2024 presidential election. These culture wars that they're launching. Stand by. Back from break in 3 minutes. Okay.
Elena, how are you? Good, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. Okay. Thank you. That was very interesting listening to Michael. It's really interesting. I was also thinking, and this is for another conversation or another time, but I've been talking to people in our community about what we're going to do with so-called Hispanic heritage or Latinx heritage, Latino Heritage Month coming up. Ours is September 16th to October 16th.
Right.
And I wanted to, I'll talk to you more about that because it has been really a celebration of food and culture, and we have so much more to say than that.
Right. There's history.
Not that those things are not important, but there's much, much more.
Well, there's history as well, because the second president of Mexico is Vicente Guerrero, who was of African descent and a former slave, and he abolished slavery in Mexico in 1829. Our histories intersect. But go ahead, Elena.
Our histories do intersect, and there's never any play on that. Yeah. So I've spent my life as a Detroit Chicana building solidarity in ways that has been very contested between Black and Brown solidarity. So I would like to talk more about that. But the thing I wanted to really talk to you about, if you don't mind, is the Library Commission.
Okay.
So I don't know if you are aware, people in Detroit, because we have been so denied any actual truth in reporting or an understanding of the structure of our city. The Library Commission is appointed by the Detroit School Board. Mm-hmm. For over 100 years, that has been the process, except for the period of time we were under emergency management. And the emergency manager appointed people to the Library Commission in violation of our charter, of the city charter. And I was on the school board at that time. Lamar Lemons was the chair, and we went to court and fought it, but we lost in court. But after emergency management was lifted, supposedly, they began back to the process of having the school board appoint to the Library Commission. Now, the Library Commission governs the library. There are 7 members. School board has, school board went at large. It used to be district, but it went at large. So I can't get elected to the school board no more because I can't get elected citywide. So far, I haven't been able to get elected citywide, but I served 2 terms on the school board as an elected official because we had district voting. But then when they did the dissolution of DPS, they went citywide, and it's really, really hard for Latino to get elected citywide in Detroit. It actually has never happened. But I say that to say that I have applied 3 times now, and this will be the 4th time that I'm applying to be a member of the Library Commission, but I would have to be appointed by the Detroit School Board. And I have sent in a Freedom of Information request on what is the process, how do they decide who would be eligible to be on the board, on the commission, and who are the people who have applied. So they didn't say what the requirements were, but I know I meet them. I have a master's degree from Wayne State University. The other people, we're all qualified, right? But I can never get on it. So in 100+ years history of the library's existence in Detroit, there's never been a Latino on the Detroit Library Commission. So what do you need us to do? Well, I want for people to understand, first of all, that the reason the branches are still closed, there's only 6 branches open. These are the things I want to tell you. There are no school libraries in Detroit Public Schools. There are no school libraries. Wait. You said that too fast. You said there are no libraries in any Detroit public school? Well, they might have some open, but they don't have librarians as a category of employment in Detroit public schools anymore because they did away with them under emergency management. And then when DPSCD came in, which was dissolution of Detroit public schools, then Detroit public schools community district came in, they do not have a category for school librarians. Wait. I want to understand this. And Michael, how will our children learn anything if they don't have access to a library? Hold on. Listen to me. Wait a minute. Listen to me for a second here. That was the practice of me believing I could be president, go to the moon, right? Change the world. Even though my librarians in every school was the meanest teacher out there, but they opened up the door to hope and wonderment and thinking. Michael.
Yeah.
This is crazy. What? The school board. Let me add something here, Brenda. That's okay. Brenda, let me add something here. If only 6 branches are open in Detroit, only 6 branches have been reopened. And the school libraries are not open. And nobody will say how many AP classes there are in Detroit, but how are you going to even succeed in an AP class if you don't have access to a library anywhere? So this is the thing I'm telling you. Our students are so far behind. What do we need to do? What do we need to do? I'm outraged in knowing this. So what do we need to do? I would really love to be appointed to the Library Commission, not only because I'm Latino, because I'm not foolish enough to think that's enough. I'm not foolish enough to think that's sufficient. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. What is necessary is that we have people that are informed about the fact that the Detroit public libraries money, our bond money, our millage money, is being diverted by the Downtown Development Authority and DCEG to take money and give it to developers that should be going to the libraries. So the developers are getting their money. When is the next board meeting? school board meeting. So that's where
school board meeting. Oh, don't get me to lie. I think it might be tomorrow, Tuesday evening.
Can you check on that and text me that information so I can give it out before we go tonight?
I will. I will get it to you immediately. But what I'm saying is that I would love to be appointed to the Library Commission, but I would also, more importantly, the people need to know the structure of the libraries so that we can take our money back and reopen our libraries.
Here, let me interject this before we come up on the break. So it looks like I'm on the Detroit Public Library's website right now. It looks like there's 6 branches open. The main branch on Woodward, right by Wayne State. The Campbell branch, Vernon Highway. Edison branch on Joy Road that I used to go to when I was a child. Jefferson branch out East Outer Drive. Then you've got the Parkman branch on Oakman, and then Redford branch, Grand River, and Wilder. East 7 Mile Road. Is it the closing took place? There was more than these 6, but I think because of COVID, they're shut down. Is that what it is? And only 6 have reopened?
The COVID was the pretext. COVID was pretext. Now they're saying they're going to demolish Conley because of flooding. They're saying they're going to demolish what? I created Conley branch in Michigan and Martin.
Okay.
Now let me say this. I have created a group called Friends of the Bowen Branch Library, which is on West Grand Boulevard in Verner. In our neighborhood, in our neighborhood in South, that is a library that people would walk to. People walk there because they don't have cars. People that don't speak English go there. They had all the publications in Spanish. And you also go there to apply for jobs. That's the only internet access a lot of people have.
Right.
Not only that, but the year before quarantine, the Friends of the Bowen Branch were able. Oh, right.
All right. Stand by. Bathroom break in 4 minutes. Stand by. Bathroom break in 4 minutes. Be sure to register for my new online class starting up Saturday, February 5th for African American History Month. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, where they didn't teach you in school. Class number 1 is starting up Saturday, February 5th, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com for more information. We have the class discounted right now. There's bonus content that you can start watching. You're also going to get 15 free lectures of me in digital format as well when you register for Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, where they didn't teach you in school. We deal with thousands of years of history and what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. We also have a bundle pack on sale. You can register for both of my classes for $120. It's a $260 value. Stand by. Bathroom break in 3 minutes. Bathroom break in 1 minute.
And or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media.
Is Mr. John still on the line?
I am here.
Who is he? Who is it? Who is?
I'm still here.
Okay, hold on, Elena.
Okay.
Mr. John was holding on. I just want to get him through. Michael, my engineer, can you put Mr. John on?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I'm on. Listen now, Queen B. I was doing you about this. This young lady took advocating this for quite some time about that Liberia. And they were standing in his car, showing down and speaking of anything from the Liberia and so forth. I got they were talking about that for over 7 weeks. Okay? The stupid children you got down there. You know, you got these Liberia and so forth. The one had one, was crazy open, and if you want to get a plain college now. Now, you stop what you know about this. I just, you know, I educate her because she's knowledge and she knows what she's talking about. And
right.
You can money down there for quite some time, so we can put them in that other places and so forth. And I want to ask the whole shit about I got a nerve block. Okay.
That's okay.
Jim Crow. If you know Jim Crow, what is the whole check right there about the new Jim Crow? Is anything involved in that so forth? The new Jim Crow. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. John. Happy New Year. Michael.
Yeah.
Because what about the new Jim Crow?
Is John still there? What about you referring to the book by Michelle Alexander? What are you referring to as the new Jim Crow? What are you referring to, John?
Well, I think that he's just talking about in general, you know. Yeah, the book, the new Jim Crow, and how that relates to what's going on in this country. Yeah.
Well, I mean that's a very broad question. The new Jim Crow from Michelle Alexander, who's last time I checked, associate professor of law at Ohio State University. It dealt with the premise was dealing with how a lot of things that were unacceptable in the treatment of former slaves after slavery ended, being barred from, whether they were being barred from voting or different things like this. It's acceptable to do that to people if they have been criminalized, if they've been convicted of a crime. So, for instance, felony disenfranchisement, people losing their right to vote because they have become a felon, that goes back to shortly after the 15th Amendment of 1870 is adopted in February 3rd, 1870. And it was a way to suppress the African-American vote. If we look at the voter suppression laws, I think maybe John was talking about the voter suppression laws. 19 states have passed about 34 voter suppression laws, last count from the Brenda Center for Justice. You have over 400 voter suppression laws being pushed by Republicans in Republican dominated state legislatures, especially. Okay, so this is a continuation of what happened after the Civil War ended, the continuation of Reconstruction, and a continuation, I would say, of the ending of Reconstruction, especially towards the end of Reconstruction, where we start seeing the suppressing of African Americans' rights, and we start seeing rulings against African Americans in the U.S. Supreme Court. But if we look at the Jim Crow, if we look at after Reconstruction ends in 1877, and we look at say go back to 1889, when Tennessee state legislature passes a law segregating passenger cars and street cars and things like this, and then we see the Mississippi State Convention of 1890, where the white county judge who presided over the state convention said, we are here to exclude the Negro. And they rewrote the Mississippi state constitution and legally imposed poll taxes and literacy tests to suppress the African-American vote in a state where African-Americans were the majority of the population and the majority of the voters. So this became known as the Mississippi Plan. This is something, see, I teach online history classes, and we go through and break all this stuff down. Actually, we have one starting up this Saturday, February 5th, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And then that's going to be on Saturdays. And then on Sundays, at the same time, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Sundays, we have From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And these are 10-week online courses. And we go through, break all this stuff down. If people go to my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. They can register for the class. It's a very minuscule cost for it. And you still have access to the full class even after class is over with. But the Washington Post has an article from I think it's from 2021, and it deals with the Mississippi Plan. This became the model that white Southern states Southern states used to rewrite their state constitutions to suppress the African American vote. Okay, Alabama is going to do this in 1901. You have South Carolina about 1895. Louisiana does in 1898, and we're going to see this sweep throughout the South.
Let me just jump in and ask you this. Mm-hmm. This is under the presidency of some of our quote unquote beloved presidents, right?
What are you talking about?
Teddy Roosevelt, FDR.
Well, this is before that. We're looking at 1890, 1895, 1898, 1901. We're looking at in early 1900s in Oklahoma and South Carolina. Okay, so what happens is they are rewriting these state constitutions to suppress the African American vote, and also there were approximately 2,000 African American elected officials that got elected during Reconstruction. Okay, and in 1870, you have Hiram Rhodes Revels, who was the first African American U.S. senator from Mississippi. One of the things that's really important to understand, and a lot of people don't know this, is that for about the first 124 years that the U.S. Senate existed, voters did not vote for U.S. senators. It wasn't until about 1913, 1914 that people started voting for U.S. senators. Before that, U.S. senators were appointed by the state legislature. So when we see these voter suppression laws being pushed by Republicans, that is being funded by groups like the Heritage Action Group, Heritage Action, which is a sister organization to the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation was founded in 1973 by Paul Weyrich. And the Heritage Foundation is a very right-wing conservative organization. And one of the things they do is attack voting rights. Okay. There's a video of Paul Weyrich on YouTube from about 1980. And he talks about how it's not in their best interest for everybody to vote, and they want less people voting. Okay, they want less people voting because they're going to rally their base and use voter suppression tactics to suppress the votes, especially of African Americans and people who vote for Democrats, things like this. So what we're seeing here is the big lie being pushed, and is being a big lie from Donald Trump, who lost legitimately the 2020 presidential election. And his own attorney general said they searched and couldn't find any evidence of widespread voter fraud. So Trump is lying. But what's happening is this big lie is being weaponized to suppress the votes of African Americans and Latinos, Asian Americans, and especially white college students who are more prone to vote Democratic, et cetera. Okay, so this is what we have to fight about. And this 2022 midterm election is a critical midterm election, and it's the first midterm election after a insurrection since the midterm election of 1866, which was the year after the Civil War ended in 1865.
I want to ask you, because I know your time getting short. Your show was going to come up after this. And Elena, hold on the line. We're going to continue to talk about the library. I want to you to explain what happened after the Civil War, during Reconstruction, and the Jim Crow laws becoming widespread.
Okay, so very quickly here, if we to connect this all together, there's an article from May 13th, 2021 from Mother Jones, and I talk about this on my show and in my classes that I teach. Uh, this deals with the voter suppression bill in Senate Bill 202 in Georgia, and it talks about Heritage Action and Jessica Anderson, who is the executive director of Heritage Action, which is the sister organization. Heritage Action for America is the sister organization to the Heritage Foundation. She was caught on video talking to a group of big money donors, explaining to them how this group crafted the voter suppression bill, Senate Bill 202, in 2001, that was passed in Georgia and signed into law by Brian Kemp within an hour of it passing the state legislature. And this group is behind these copycat bills that popped up in different states across the country. Okay, they're funding this. All right. So if we look at, there's a good piece from the Zen Education Project that deals with the Mississippi State Constitution of 1890, and then there's also a piece from history.com, official website of the History Channel. There's a good piece from history.com that deals with the how Jim Crow era laws helped to suppress the African American vote. Okay, so what you see taking place now is important to understand. After the Civil War ends, you're going to have state constitutions being rewritten, and you're going to have rights and privileges given to African Americans. Toward the end of Reconstruction, you go to 1874, 1875, 1876, 1877. You see the collapse of the Freedmen's Bank in 1874. Okay, we see the Freedmen's Bureau shuts down about 1872. The U.S. Bureau of Freedmen, Refugees, and Abandoned Lands, which was created by an act of Congress to help aid the former slaves, help them negotiate labor contracts, help feed them, build colleges, schools, things like this. Okay, so with the Compromise of 1877 and Rutherford B. Hayes, who is the Republican candidate for president, there was a backdoor agreement between Republicans and Democrats to allow Rutherford B. Hayes to become president. If in exchange for that, they would remove the remainder of the Union troops out of the South that were enforcing to a certain extent the new rights and privileges of African Americans. Okay, so this is what takes place.
And so let me ask you something. Why do we hardly ever hear about Rutherford B. Hayes? Right? I mean, you know, that section where you have to know all the presidents, but it seems like his run to the presidency changed the course of this country.
Well, yeah, you have that. You have the even under President Ulysses S. Grant, when the Clinton, Mississippi massacre of 1875 took place, and President Ulysses S. Grant did not intervene, whereas previously in 1871, Grant declared martial law in 9 counties in South Carolina using the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871. So what happened was, toward the end of Reconstruction, there was a declining desire by Republicans to intervene on behalf of African Americans, on behalf of the former slaves. They lost control of the House of Representatives in the 1874, I think it was the 1874 midterm election. Okay, the Democrats take back control of the House of Representatives. There's a declining desire to intervene on behalf of African Americans. And then when the Clinton, Mississippi massacre happens in about 1875, President Ulysses S. Grant uses this non-intervention, this non-intervention policy, stating that they were getting tired of intervening in the South in these racial conflicts, where white domestic terrorists were attacking African Americans. Huh?
Is all of this happening below the Mason-Dixon line, or were other things happening, you know, above the Mason-Dixon line as well?
Well, you have things happening. You have things happening in the north, but a lot of this is taking place in the south. And what it is these former Confederate states, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, Florida, things like this. These former Confederate states are taking back control of the state governments, rewriting the state constitutions, okay, and suppressing the African American vote, instituting segregation to take back full control of their societies. And see, during Reconstruction, you had African Americans getting elected to public office. They're writing laws that now impact their former slave masters, things like this. And this period of this Jim Crow era, if we go to the 1880s, 1890s, this is a backlash to all of that. Okay. And then we see the U.S. Supreme Court case of 1896, Plessy versus Ferguson, which legally institutes separate but equal, legally institutes the Jim Crow laws. I know we're coming up on a break.
Okay. And when you come back.
Yeah, I can stay for one more segment.
When you come back, I want you to tell us what you're doing for African History Month, and I hope to have you back before the month is over.
Okay. Stand by, back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by. Stand by, back from break, and we dropped the call. Let me call him back. Stand by.
Plan for Black History Month.
Okay, well, in addition to doing my radio show Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Times, and Eastern Standard Time, and Sunday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF, and on my social media platforms, on the African History Network on Facebook, and Michael Imhotep on YouTube, IMHOTEP. In addition to that, we have new online classes starting up Saturday, February 5th. 2022, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Sunday, February 6th, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturdays. We're doing 10 consecutive Saturdays. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. This is a Kemet's one of the original names for Egypt. This is a 10-week online class that I teach. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips, guest speakers, a ton of information. You can watch from around the world. The class is on sale of $80. We also have a special bundle pack when you can register for both of my classes at a discount. So visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And then on Sundays, I teach another class called From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865-1968. Okay. Now, with both of these classes, we have bonus content. As soon as you register, you can start watching classes, and you're going to get bonus lectures from me in digital format also when you register for these. But From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, this basically picks up where the first class leaves off. And we start with the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. And we deal with that land that the U.S. buys from France because of the Haitian Revolution, and we deal with what leads up to the Civil War taking place. We look at the Mexican-American War of 1846-1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo of 1848, where the U.S. gets the land that makes up Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, California, Utah, and Nevada. That all comes from Mexico. Okay, we talk about Vicente Guerrero, who was the first president, he was the second president of Mexico, first president of African descent, and he abolishes slavery in Mexico in 1829, which sets up the Alamo fight between the U.S. settlers there in Texas against the Mexican army in Santa Ana. All this history. Okay, so we have that. I'll be doing lectures at a few places as well here in Detroit. So we'll have that information on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. If you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, whether it's in-state or out-of-state, email me at ahnshow@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AHNShow, SHOW, at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, or call me at 313-462-0003, 313-462-0003, and we can set something up. And I could do virtual presentations, and any of these classes I teach, I can modify them, and we can teach them either in person or virtually for your group, organization, church, or what have you. Okay, so visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and I'm on Roland Martin Unfiltered every Friday as a panelist as well.
I want to tell you something and then ask you a question.
Okay.
I'm not born here. I'm born in the South. I grew up in the North and here in Detroit, which is considered the Midwest. Mm-hmm. But, however, when I meet people, I ask them where their people are from, you know, because you can't go by names. As the older I get, I know that there are other last names that I didn't know of that are part of my family. And so what I have found out is that a lot of people don't know where their people are from nowadays. I met this young man. I am a part of the Tuskegee Airmen Detroit chapter. Sure. And before COVID, we would take the kids up to fly. And one kid came in, and his name, I don't want to give you his last name, it was Eddie and something the fifth, right? And so you hardly hear of a Black person that's the fifth of anything, right? Mm-hmm. So I was talking to him, and I said, well, where are your people from? He said, well, we're from Detroit. I said, no, where are your people from? All he knew was that his people was from Detroit. Not that, back as far as before his people got to this country, they couldn't be from Detroit, but they're rare. But I hear that's rare, but I hear that a lot, that families that have been here, since 1930s or so, don't really know where their families are from, right? And they don't know the history of their family. And And not all black families lead back to slavery, but however, you should know, not just because of personal relationships, you don't know if you're sleeping with your cousin, right? But then you'll know, their struggle and their successes,
Right.
And their achievements, which you should be living far beyond because you're the next or second generation. Do you find that a lot?
Well, usually I usually don't find people who are up north and may not know about relatives or things down south. It's important to understand prior to the Great Migration, 90% of African Americans lived in the South. Okay. By 1910, still 90% of African Americans lived in the South. That's a legacy of slavery. The Great Migration is basically from 1915 to 1970. You have 6 million African Americans migrating from the South up north and out west. You have the big boom started, even though it is precipitated by 1908, 1909, 1910, with African Americans coming up north, going to work for Henry Ford in Highland Park, Michigan. But it really explodes during the World War I, especially when the U.S. gets involved in World War I. World War I is 1914, 1918. U.S. gets involved in 1917. And you're going to have about 5 million men who fight in World War I, most of them white. But what happens is when they go to war, it leaves a labor vacuum in these northern factories. And you're going to have these factories marketing the African Americans in the South, in the cotton fields, things like this, to come up north for a better way of life. So this is going to really start this great migration. And we're going to see the Harlem Renaissance take place. We're going to see Dr. Carter G. Woodson and Association for the Study of Negro Life and History and all of this. So majority of African Americans today, if they don't know themselves, if they talk to their parents, their grandparents, things like this, they're going to have some type of ancestry in the South. Okay. And we have seen over about the past 20 years or so, we see African Americans moving back down south as well. But it's important to understand the history of the Civil War and the history of the Confederacy and Reconstruction, because that plays into the culture of the South. Okay. And you see many of these southern states have Republican governors, Republican dominated state legislatures, and all this is connected. We look at Georgia, where Brian Kemp is, who stole the election from Stacey Abrams. Georgia has the largest Confederate monument of anywhere in the country. It's called Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Right.
Okay. So all that history is connected. This
suppressed.
right.
We see the rise of the and wait a minute, you're going to have to go in a second, so we're going to get back to that. We need to talk about the appointment of the next Supreme Court justice being a black woman.
Well, what to do that next week, because I got to get ready for my show. Oh yeah, you're gonna do that because I got to run. I'm on at 11 p.m. So everybody keep listening after your show's over with.
Come back.
Yeah,
I got a list for you.
Oh yeah, we'll deal with that. Yeah, we'll deal with that.
Back.
Okay.
Yes. And so we're seeing some of the same things that happened after Reconstruction happening today.
Exactly.
And how it relates. And now we're going into Black History Month. We need to know this stuff.
Exactly. All right, Brenda, thanks. I appreciate it. Everybody be sure to listen to the African History Network show, 11 p.m. Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. and Sundays, 9 p.m., 11 p.m. Visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and I'll talk to you all later. Peace. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. All right, thanks. All right, stand by, everybody. I got to get ready for my show. Okay. I'm back on the air at 11 p.m. We'll talk to you later. Peace. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And I'll be back shortly for my show, the African History Network show. Peace. If you like this type of information, also, you can support the African History Network. $ the AHN show through Cash App. $ the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show.